hppodcraft.com.
In 1925, I went into Oklahoma looking for snake lore, and I came out with a fear of snakes that will last me the rest of my life. I admit it is foolish since there are natural explanations for everything I saw and heard, but it masters me nonetheless. If the old story had been all there was to it, I would not have been so badly shaken. My work as an American Indian ethnologist has hardened me to all kinds of extravagant legendary, and I know that simple white people can beat the Redskins at their own game when it comes to fanciful inventions. But I can't forget what I saw with my own eyes at the insane asylum in Guthrie.
All right, we start with an insane asylum.
Yeah. Well, that was the opening line from the story The Curse of Yig, written by H.P. Lovecraft and Zelia Bishop. Though this is not the Zelia Bishop Literary Podcast.
No, this is the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm so happy that we're covering this story. I had never read it before.
Me neither.
It was a great length. Read it all in one setting.
Yep.
And it scared me, and
Yeah.
I thought it was neat, had great setting.
I'm with you. It's a really creepy, disturbing story, and the end surprised me and grossed me out and freaked me out. It was good. It's a really good story.
Now, before we jump into the synopsis of it,
Yeah.
just so we know who this other authoress is.
Zelia Bishop.
Now, we did cover another revision 2 weeks ago, and it was truly a revision. The author, DeCastro, had written the story, and Lovecraft had rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, but I believe that this was something where there was just an outline, or what do you know about her and what this process was?
Samuel Loveman was the one that kind of connected her to Lovecraft, and she heard that Lovecraft would do these revisions for not that much money, and so she contacted him. She had a kind of an idea of a story, but not much of one. Lovecraft sent her a questionnaire that she filled out about the setting, which is Oklahoma. And in her basic story, well, I think Lovecraft says it best himself. I'm going to go ahead and quote him here. This is in a letter to August Derleth, October 6, 1929, about this story. This story is about 75% mine. All I had to work on was a synopsis describing a couple of pioneers in a cabin with a nest of rattlesnakes beneath, the killing of the husband by snakes, the bursting of the corpse, and madness of the wife, who was an eyewitness to the horror. There is no plot or motivation, no prologue or aftermath of the incident, so that one might say the story, as a story, is wholly my own. I invented the snake god and the curse, the tragic wielding of the axe by the wife, the matter of the snake victim's identity, and the asylum epilogue. Also, I worked up the geographic and other incidental color, getting some data from the alleged authoress, who knows Oklahoma, but more from books.
So this really is a Lovecraft story.
It's a Lovecraft story. He also wrote 2 more stories with her. Supposedly, Chad, you were telling me that she never even paid him for his work.
Well, that's what I've picked up from a couple of different sources. She owed him a lot of money. In fact, before they did this, I think he did some kind of revision work for her before that she already owed him $25 coming into the deal. Was very bad at paying, and like you say, they did 2 more stories, and I don't think that she ever paid him, and that's the reason that their relationship stopped, which is too bad because this is a great story, and he deserved the money.
This is a great story.
Now, she's a real person. I think that some people also believe that Zelia Bishop is some kind of nom de plume for a famous author. She used the pen name of Hazel Heald, or that this was actually somebody else that was just writing with her pen name. But she was a real person, and this is actually her name.
Right,
she wrote in some other anthologies and that sort of thing.
Well, all right. Well, with that, let's just get into the story. It's set in Oklahoma, in the city of Guthrie. The year is 1925. Our protagonist, or our narrator, I should say, is an ethnologist. We don't have a name for him. They never say what his name is. And he is trying to do some research specifically about a Native American mythology. And there's this god called Yig, a snake god. Now, he kind of believes that it's a prototype of Quetzalcoatl. But this is like much older than the Quetzalcoatl god. Right. And so he starts asking people, about this god. A lot of people don't know, and a lot of the old Native Americans and old settlers don't say anything, get a little sketchy when he brings it up. But eventually, an old Native American tells them about this Dr. McNeil, who lives in Guthrie.
Now, in Oklahoma, they seem particularly reticent to talk about it, but he had been traveling from Guatemala all the way up to the Oklahoma plains. So he had done all sorts of researching south of the border.
Yeah.
About the snake god Yig, and maybe got a little more information as it pertained to Quetzalcoatl and that sort of thing. But once he's here, nobody wants to talk about it except the one guy that says, go see this doctor.
Yeah. He hunts down this Dr. McNeil, who works in an asylum. He says this agent, who was an ex-Indian agent,
The funny thing is, I thought this was, and maybe it's because of the co-author, but I thought, for whatever reason, when I started reading this story, I thought it was a woman protagonist. Until it got to this part where they used the pronoun he, that I realized that the character was a man. I don't know why. I just assumed.
Well, it's just maybe because it was co-written by a woman. So Dr. McNeil says, you've been studying Yig, huh? Well, I've got something I should really tell you about. There's this Curse of Yig, and I've got somebody that is a living victim of this curse. Right. And he says, okay. And the doctor kind of is busy with all of his duties and stuff and kind of makes him wait for a while, but then takes him down into the basement. There's this...
Now, before you go down there, though, I just realized it was when he says, you've done remarkable work for a man as young as you seem to be. That's when I found out. But in that paragraph, too, when he says, so you've been studying the Yig legend, it's got the worst... I mean, the story's great, but he says, so you've been studying the Yig legend, eh? He reflected sententiously. It's just the worst adverb I've ever seen in my life.
Sententiously, which means as of having sentience.
Yeah, as an intelligent life form, he reflected. I mean, it's what a terrible. Just cut that right out. He should blame that one on Zelia.
Yes, probably Zelia.
Yeah, so he's going to show him this victim of Yig.
There's a door marked B116, and then there's like a little slidey panel on it, one of those things.
Well, it's sort of like a Silence of the Lambs scene. Takes him down to the basement. There's doors that go to cells, but then there's also an extra hallway.
Yeah.
They have to go through that door and go down this extra hallway.
And then he slams on it, like to awaken something that's inside of there. The doctor is looking through, and then he goes, okay, take a look. And then as he moves through, he sees something moving around. There's like hay and straw on the floor, and he sees something kind of wriggling and slithering.
The moving object was almost of human size and entirely devoid of clothing. It was absolutely hairless, and its tawny-looking back seemed subtly squamous in the dim, ghoulish light. Around the shoulders it was rather speckled and brownish, and the head was very curiously flat. As it looked up to hiss at me, I saw that beady little black eyes were damnably anthropoid. But I could not bear to study them long. They fastened themselves on me with a horrible persistence, so that I closed the panel gaspingly and left the creature to wriggle about unseen in its matted straw and spectral twilight. I must have reeled a bit, for I saw that the doctor was gently holding my arm as he guided me away. I was stuttering over and over again, but for God's sake, what is it?
Creepy.
Oh.
There's some kind of snake man in there.
You know what's really creepy about it is that the snake man doesn't walk. Like it's anthropoid, but it like still crawls around on its belly. That just really freaks me out.
And I don't know what to take away from, is it a pitiable creature? You know, is this creature, does it understand what's going on?
Right.
Is it imprisoned against its will? Or is it
don't know.
hurting or in pain? Or
don't know.
The doctor makes some reference to, at some point when our ethics change, we'll be able to put it out of its misery. But we can't right now, so we're just keeping it.
And he says he's got to start training new staff to take care of it.
Because there's only like 3 old orderlies that'll take care, and they have to clean out the room, and they have to feed it, and most of the staff won't do it.
And the thing doesn't seem to be aging.
Oh, right, and that's what, he's got to train new people because the thing's not getting any older. Yeah. Oh, wow, that's so creepy.
That's really
There's also that great adjective in there, squamous.
Yeah, Lovecraft uses that a few times.
Covered in scales.
There's a good, if you go to forums at all, I don't know if you've checked this out yet, but there's a nice thread where one of our listeners has taken all of the works of H.P. Lovecraft and put them into one document and done searches to find out how many times in all of his work Lovecraft has used certain words.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's Ruth Cthulhu Chick. Unnameable has only been used 5 times, Eldridge 24, Cyclopean 54.
Oh, wow.
Stench 60, Blasphemy 19, Madness 120, but Nameless is a big winner with 168 times.
Wow.
Yeah, get the forums. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. The doctor takes our narrator to his office and sits him down and is going to tell him the tale. I don't know all of them firsthand, but this is what I've pieced together. Well, Yig, the snake god, is of the Central Plains tribes and he believes the source for the Quetzalcoatl and the Kukulkan myths.
What's Kukulkan?
Kukulkan is a Mayan serpent god.
And Yig is the source of these gods.
Yeah, Yig is the one that has inspired these other gods. So it's an old legend. Now, the one thing about Yig that's really important is his devotion and his care for his children, which are snakes.
All snakes are his children.
All snakes are Yig's children, and he's very protective of them. Native Americans would be really extra careful not to kill snakes, even if it threatened themselves. Like if a rattlesnake was going to bite you, you wouldn't kill it. You would just kind of get away from it, and that was it.
Punch it.
Put some chloroform on its mouth and then run away.
That's how we did it when I was growing up. We chloroform ourselves. I'm from the Midwest, man. We knew about Yig.
The story really starts with these pioneers, Walker Davis and his wife Audrey. In the spring of 1889, they were coming down from Arkansas to Oklahoma, specifically north of the Wichita River, which is now Caddo County. They're from the Ozarks. They kind of had a tough life, but they decided they were going to try and make a better life for themselves because the government was giving away big swaths of land, and they were going to try and make a life for themselves.
Right.
So they packed up the wagon, got the mules and the dog. They had this old dog named Wolf. They went and made it down south. Now, the one thing that we need to know about our character Walker, our main guy here, is that he's really, really afraid of snakes. Like, totally freak him out to the point where he would almost go catatonic when he would see a snake. And if you started talking about snakes, he'd get all jittery and freaked out.
You know, one thing that's interesting is when the doctor begins to tell this tale, it says that the narrator felt a tingling sensation as when a theater curtain rises, which I thought was a neat way to describe it. I mean, you know you're about to get into this really interesting story, but truly, as clinical and as sort of measured as the doctor has been thus far, when he does get into this story, it's very theatrical the way he tells it. He draws things out. He's doing dialects.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I assume he's doing these dialects.
Right.
It's one of my favorite things in literature when you get a story within a story, and in the story within a story, there's all these different dialects. And is the person who's telling it doing all those voices? And I assume this doctor is, or at least that's how I imagine it.
Well, the doctor is heavily involved in community theater.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It doesn't say that in the script, but I get that. You know, that's in the subtext. Yeah.
I intuited it.
On their way down to Oklahoma, they stop in different towns and the different Indian settlements, and you know, everybody's nice to them. You know, not too many problems, but Walker starts to hear these rumors about Yig and about the god. And normally this kind of stuff would freak him out, but he gets really into it, kind of obsessed with it.
Well, it does freak him out, and that's why. He wants to know everything he can about Yig, because snakes, he hates them.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to get on Yig's bad side.
He does everything he can. He learns some chants. He learns, you know, little magic. He wants to pick up trinkets that might protect him from snakes, those types of things. Anti-snake charms, as they call them. And everything seems to be going fine on their trip.
As they call them.
Yeah, you know, they call them anti-snake charms. It's different from the mountains because Oklahoma's pretty flat, for those of you that don't know Oklahoma. And there's some bad storms that are hitting, and his wife persuades him to, let's move over to, there's kind of a big cliff face. Let's camp there for the night. When they do camp there, he's a little bit nervous about it because in cliffs and rocks and things like that, this is where snakes go. And so he doesn't really want to go there, but since the wind is blowing so hard and they're worried about the mules and everything, he says, okay. That night, the dog starts wandering around, and then the wife kind of follows to see what's up with the dog, and there is a nest of baby snakes over there. She's, oh no, if my husband sees these, he's gonna flip out. So she takes the butt of the rifle and she just kills them all. She just smashes them. Not out of any kind of fear, just knowing I got to take care of this because my husband will go nuts if I don't. Unfortunately, he hears the noise of what's going on. He comes over and checks it out, and he flips out.
God's sake, but why'd you go for to do that? Ain't you heard all the things they've been telling about this snake devil Yig? You'd oughta told me and we'd have moved on. Don't you know there's a devil god what gets even if you hurt its children? What'd you think the Indians all dances and beats their drums in the fall about? This land's under a curse, I tell you. Nigh every soul we had talked to since some come in and said the same. Yig rules here, and he comes out every fall for to get his victims and turn them into snakes. Why, Odd, they won't none of them Injuns cross the Canadian kill a snake for the love of nor money. God knows what you done to yourself, gal, stomping out a whole brood of Yig's chillin'. He'll get you sure sooner or later, unless I can buy a charm off of some Indian medicine men. He'll get you all, sure as there's a God in heaven, he'll come out of the night and turn you into a crawling spotted snake.
And apparently the doctor said that in that dialect. And, you know, our reader today did a great job delivering that. Because this is, you know, typical Lovecraft phonetic sort of hick speak. Yeah. But our reader today is one Mr. Sitara Falcon, who I think just did a great job with that.
Very good, Sitara. Thank you very much. He's, you know, pretty mad at his wife, but, you know, what's he going to do? And so he starts really, as they continue on their journey, he tries to talk to more Indians, finds the Wichitas, which is the local tribe, and talks to them and goes, okay, what can I do? And they're all just like, well, Yig's pretty hardcore. There's not much you can do, but if you say these words, he offered them whiskey. And so they're like, oh yeah, we can give you some stuff.
He's bartering with all the Native Americans using whiskey. To be clear, what he's worried about is that Yig is going to turn his wife into a snake, because that's what the legend says that Yig will do if you mess with his children.
If you mess with his children, you will be turned into a snake yourself. Moving on, this is the spring that they're moving down this way. First, get some farmland, then they build their one big room cabin with the help of the local neighbors. There's other farmers that live about a mile away, and those are Joe and Sally Compton, and they're also from Arkansas, so they become really good friends with these guys.
As they're friends now, the wives are having one of their gossip sessions one day, and Sally Compton tells Audrey about an old Arkansas snake tale that she knows about.
Yeah.
Which is, she has a lot of these gruesome snake stories, and the one that really sticks in her mind is about a guy in Scott County who had been bitten by a whole horde of snakes all at once. Mm-hmm. And because of the poison swelling within his body, his entire body had finally burst open with this kind of nauseating pop sound, which is terrible. And Audrey, of course, didn't repeat this to her husband.
No.
She said, tell you what, Sally, don't bring that up when we're having dinner later. My husband really doesn't need to know about this. And I wonder how serious she's taking the whole thing. They don't really say, but in the story, I wonder if she thinks her husband's a little crazy. He's out swapping whiskey with the natives, trying to get anti-snake charms, and he's worried that she's going to turn into a snake. Do you really think she takes him seriously?
I think she doesn't at first, but I think his belief in it starts to really affect her. That he believes it so much that she's going, well, I think he's a little crazy, but what if there's something to it? And that sort of is going to play later into the story.
I love when Walker's talking to the different tribes, there's a paragraph where it just says, Yig was a great god. He was bad medicine. He did not forget things.
No. So he says every autumn, Yig will show up and kind of get his vengeance. He's really hungry, and if you've done anything wrong, that's when you're going to get it. That's when the curse will come in effect.
And that's why all the Indians keep the drums pounding, and they play drums every night in the autumn, because they're trying to keep Yig away. And they call down the aid of Tarawa, because men are the children of Tarawa, just as the snakes are Yig's children.
Right, exactly. So they're hoping that Tarawa will protect them from Yig, and if they've somehow upset Yig in any kind of way. But Yig is a powerful god, and they're afraid of him. The fall comes, the corn is harvested. This is the end of the season, so people are getting together. There's going to be a big party, but there's incessant drumming off in the distance. It's just kind of all the time at this time of year, which is close to Halloween. And
Audrey doesn't like it too much, but the Walker says, and no, that's a good thing. We want that pounding going on in the background all the time.
Right. And the season is abnormally warm, it says. It's very hot. In fact, people aren't even putting fires in their fireplace. Since it's harvest time, they're going to kind of have a big shindig over at the big cabin that they have. Right. This guy, Lafayette Smith, who came from southern Missouri, is one heck of a fiddler.
It's for Halloween. That's when the warm spell breaks, is finally on Halloween. Yeah. There's a great sentence where it says, Lafayette Smith's fiddle inspired a very fair-sized company to great fits of saltatory grotesqueness in the one good-sized but crowded room. This is during the party, so I didn't know what saltatory meant. I actually had to look it up, but it's related to dancing or leaping, so they're all bad dancers. I just imagine that they're all in this big room just doing the worst moves, There's one guy's doing the shopping cart, and the other guy thinks he's doing the vacuum cleaner, and then there's a woman doing the monkey in the corner, and there's two people doing terrible robots. It's just awful. Saltatory grotesqueness.
They're farming folk, they don't have the moves.
No, but once that fiddle starts, they can't help themselves.
Yeah, they can't help themselves. It's too good. Yeah. The dogs are being a little sketchy tonight. Good old Wolf is howling every once in a while, and they think it's because it's the fiddle music, but maybe.
Yeah, he's never heard it before.
Yeah, never heard it. So it might be something else.
But there's another dog.
And there's Zeke, Tom and Jenny's dog Zeke. They don't really kind of associate together. They're too busy just being nervous. So eventually the night goes on. By 10 o'clock, people are getting tired. They get off. They all start heading off for home. Audrey and Walker go to bed. Good old Wolf gets by his place by the fireplace to go to sleep. There's a cheap alarm clock that's on the mantle, and it ticks. Now, this is the point where Dr. McNeil takes his glasses off and gets serious. So that this is what's we're going to get the good stuff right now.
Well, that's we all know from David Caruso that is the most dramatic motion that you can make, is removing a pair of glasses.
Either on or off.
Yeah, well, putting them on is you're about to relate the crescendo of the violence, but when you take them off, that's the most dramatic part of the story. There's a way to do it. You have the glasses on when you start a story. When you get to the really horrifying part, you take them off. And then when you conclude and you make a quippy, end remark, you put them back on.
Right. Okay.
That's the way it was broken down for me in literature class. I don't know what I'm talking about.
So the doctor says, again, I don't really know exactly what happened, but this is what I pieced together.
He very specifically pieced this together, by the way, because he knows what they were dreaming about. He knows all of these things.
Well, he's, community theater.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Audrey has a dream about Satan, kind of being your atypical Satan with horns and all like in the wood cuttings that she's seen before. And it wakes her up, but her husband's already awake, and he's like, do you hear something? It's something, a singing or a buzzing or a rustling. Do you know what it is? And they're not sure exactly what's making the noise.
You have a nightmare, and you wake up, and the person next to you is already awake. That's a terrible feeling.
Yeah, it is.
Because he's awake listening for something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that I was reading in and enjoying all the storytelling and how they were setting this up, but this is the actual incident the story's about, and she has that nightmare and wakes up and he's already sitting there listening. It was really creepy, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good because it's something unnerving because in your dream you're like, oh, everybody's sleeping, everything's fine. Wait, no. He's awake and nervous. What's going on? Is my dream real? Is it not real? I don't know. Well, he goes,
and nobody ever wants to wake up to have their mate say, do you hear that? It's bad.
He's like, what's that noise? It's not crickets.
He rose, felt for the lantern that hung within easy reach, and rattled the tin matchbox nailed to the wall beside it. Audrey sat up in the bed and watched the flare of the match grow to the steady glow of the lantern. Then, as their eyes began to take in the whole of the room, the crude rafters shook with the frenzy of their simultaneous shriek. For the flat, rocky floor revealed in the newborn illumination was one seething, brown-speckled mass of wriggling rattlesnakes, slithering toward the fire and even now turning their loathsome heads to menace the fright-blasted lantern bearer.
Oh, wow, man. So there's snakes everywhere in the room.
Everywhere. It's like full-on Well of Souls stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the Indiana Jones nightmare.
They sort of freak out. Walker falls out of bed and onto the floor, and she doesn't know what to do. She just tightens up.
Well, the lantern goes out when he falls.
So she can't see anything. She doesn't know what to do, and she's like under this crazy panic fear. And she's like, It must be the Curse of Yig. That must be what's going on.
It says that Walker fell as if shot by a silent arrow from no mortal's bow. That was a good description. He just falls out of bed almost silently, paralyzed with fear.
Well, she's thinking to herself, he has to be covered in snakes and bitten like crazy, and it's dead. Yeah. And then she kind of feels that the snakes are crawling up on the bed, too, under the blankets. And
one thing that she remembers is that when Walker was young, an old witch woman had predicted that he would die. That was something that played into his phobia early on, that we didn't mention, but it's something they set up early in the story. When he was this sort of witchy psychic had told him he was going to die from snakes. And when he falls and the light goes out, she says, well, it happened. My husband died just like it was predicted.
She's just in bed and she can't move and she doesn't know what to do. And
the dog is there sleeping by the fireplace too, but she just assumes he's still asleep while this is going on.
The tom-toms are beating and they're beating and they're beating. And she's like, what's taking so long? Why aren't these snakes attacking me? What nothing's happening. I don't understand.
This horrible long moment in the dark where she assumes they're climbing up the bed for her, but
exactly.
Forever to get
it's taking forever. And then the drums stop.
And so it's totally silent suddenly in there. And she looks over towards the window. The moon's coming in, and there's enough light that she can sort of see the room a little better. And then there's that sound that had been described in her friend's story.
That pop.
Dull, putrid pop of cleft skin and escaping poison in the dark. And she assumes that's, Walker.
Yeah, she assumes that her husband got filled up with poison and just popped, and so he is dead. And then she sees something at the lower edge of the window.
Then Audrey saw against the stars the black, demonic silhouette of something anthropoid, the undulant bulk of a gigantic head and shoulders fumbling slowly toward her. Yeah! Go away! Go away, snake devil! Go away, Yig! I didn't mean to kill him! I was feared he'd be scared of him! Don't, Yig, don't! I didn't go for to hurt your children! Don't come nigh me! Don't change me into no spotted snake! But the half-formless head and shoulders only lurched onward toward the bed, very silently. Everything snapped at once inside Audrey's head, and in a second she had turned from a cowering child into a raging madwoman. She knew where the axe was, hung against the wall on those pegs near the lantern. It was within easy reach, and she could find it in the dark. Before she was conscious of anything further, it was in her hands and she was creeping toward the foot of the bed, toward the monstrous head and shoulders that at every moment groped their way nearer. Had there been any light, the look on her face would not have been a pleasant one to see. "Take that, you! Take that, and that, and that!" She was laughing shrilly now, and her cackles mounted higher as she saw the starlight beyond the window was yielding to the dim, prophetic pallor of coming dawn.
So she freaking attacked this snake man with an axe.
That's so crazy. So she assumes, I guess, her husband popped open and was this half snake man. Now I see this here in the story that Dr. McNeil wiped the perspiration from his forehead and put on his glasses again.
Yep, there you go.
He's following the dramatic arc of the glass pull-off.
Well, just because it's community theater doesn't mean it's not good.
No, of course not. I assume he's excellent.
The narrator asks, so what happened? Did she live? What's the deal? And then Dr. McNeil says, yes, she lived in a way, and it was explained. I told you there was no bewitchment, only cruel, pitiful, material horror. So he goes on to explain that Sally Compton was the one who made the discovery. And she goes over there. The fire wasn't lit in the morning, which normally was. And so that kind of led her to think, well, maybe something's going on.
Yeah, she was just coming by for a regular social call, right?
Yeah. And she smells something bad when she opens up the door. And she looks on the ground and she sees the dog. Purple decay all over its skin and mange from old age. And its carcass was burst.
So it was the dog who popped open.
The dog that popped open. He got bit by the snake. The next to the door is what is called the axe-hacked remnant of a man, clad only in a nightshirt. No snake bite on this man.
Yeah.
And that man, Walker.
Yeah, Walker, she hacked him to death and he hadn't even been bitten. Probably he passed out on the floor because he was so freaked out, and as he was climbing to his feet, she went at it.
Like her craziness was what made her kill him.
Well, so she killed him because she was crazy, but what happened to her?
And wriggling flat on the floor was a loathsome, vacant-eyed thing that had been a woman, was now only a mute, mad caricature. All that this thing could do was to hiss and hiss and hiss. Both the doctor and I were brushing cold drops from our foreheads by this time. He poured something from a flask on his desk, took a nip, and handed another glass to me. I could only suggest, tremulously and stupidly, so Walker had only fainted that first time. The screams roused him, and the axe did the rest? Yes, Dr. McNeil's voice was low. But he met his death from snakes just the same. It was his fear working in two ways. It made him faint, and it made him fill his wife with the wild stories that caused her to strike out when she thought she saw the snake devil. I thought for a moment. And Audrey. Wasn't it queer how the Curse of Yig seemed to work itself out on her? I suppose the impression of hissing snakes had been fairly ground into her. Yes, there were lucid spells at first, but they got to be fewer and fewer. Her hair came white at the roots as it grew, and later began to fall out. The skin grew blotchy, and when she died, I interrupted with a start. Died? Then what was that? That thing downstairs? McNeil spoke gravely. That is what was born to her 3/4 of a year afterward. There were 3 more of them. 2 were even worse. But this is the only one that lived.
Snake baby!
Oh, snake baby.
Snake baby! Oh man, and that's the end of the story.
That is the end of the story.
It's a great ending, too, because it's not italicized for a fact. He just leaves it there.
That's really disturbing. That is just really creepy story. And then the kicker ending is extra creepy, meaning that, what, was she raped by Yig? Was it like, how did she have snake babies?
I don't know.
Was that part of the curse? You know, like because she killed Yig's babies, that instead of her just becoming a snake, she had to bear more snakes? Like, oh, that's horrific.
Yeah, and it's weird because it crosses between the supernatural and some sort of terrible birth defect. Because if she had just turned into a snake person, that would have seemed very supernatural.
Right.
But she didn't. She just went crazy in a snake-like way, right? Her skin got... she didn't physically transform other than things that could have happened to somebody who was legitimately a crazy person, you know?
Yeah.
You're right. Her hair fell out. She got blotchy skin. But her children then...
Snake babies.
I can see where the doctor's saying, well, it's not necessarily supernatural. I mean, unfortunately, it's a real material horror. She killed her husband with an axe, the dog got bitten by a snake, and then she had deformed children. We can't say necessarily that it's the Curse of Yig. And then he says, but I need to get going now. I'm playing Curly in a production of Oklahoma tonight. I have some comp tickets for you. And
that's not in the story. I mean, it's in the subtext. It's there.
It is in the subtext. Well, why else would they mention Oklahoma?
Well, Chad, I gotta say, it was. I'm always skeptical when we have to read these collaborations because usually they're not very good. But I really dug this story.
Yeah, I did too. It has a great pace to it, and it's written well. And although I don't fully understand what happens, that lends itself to the horror of it.
Yeah, that's what makes it even extra scary.
You know, and of course, snakes are just disgustingly creepy.
They don't have legs.
Yeah, they don't. I read this. You know the author Steven Pinker? He's a popular science author. He wrote a book called The Blank Slate. It's a great book, and it's about how basically a lot of things are inherent in human beings. And one of the things they found when they do cross-cultural studies of humans all over the world is that everybody's afraid of snakes.
Oh, wow.
You take a tribe in Africa, you take a family in Brooklyn, you get somebody in Poland. I mean, it's just something it's physically in our DNA because it's been passed down. And eventually it's a cell memory, but everybody's afraid of snakes. I think that's so appropriate for a Lovecraft story because he really is always trying to dig down on one of those deepest roots of fear. And certainly that's one of them.
Yeah, he really nails it. Well, Chad, we're almost to our goal for our reading of From Beyond with Bruce Green and Picture in the House with Andrew Lehman.
Right. Those are the recordings we're going to do in 3D and release.
In 3D.
And we're very, very close to hitting our goal of $2,000. So anybody who wants to make a donation, please do. We'll be hitting that mark, I think, fairly soon. And then we'll be releasing those recordings in the new year.
I'd also like to say, unfortunately, this will be our last podcast of the year. So we're going to be taking a couple weeks off because of the holiday. Both Chad and I are going to be crazy busy with, it's the holidays. And hopefully everybody else is going to be busy too. So you won't be missing the show. However, I am proud to announce that we are coming back with one of my favorites, the Dunwich Horror.
Yeah, the Dunwich Horror. That's going to be a really good one. That's a good way to kick off 2011.
Chad, it's pronounced Dunwich.
Where's is the silent W?
No, it's like Greenwich.
So I can't say Dunwich?
You can say it, but you'll be saying it wrong.
All right, well, when we're done with the podcast, then am I going to go eat a sandwich? Boom. Thank you.
The Dunwich Horror, we're not doing this solo. We're going to go into this with a guest host.
Oh, really? Who's that?
That would be one Mr. Robert M. Price.
Yahoo!
Yeah, so he's going to be joining us for the whole Dunwich experience. And it's a big favorite of his, and he's got a lot to say about it. And I know he's going to be a valuable guest host, so I can't wait to have him on the show.
That's going to be awesome. Before we get off, I want to thank Satara Falcon for doing a reading for us today. Thanks so much, Satara.
And you rocked it.
Your voice is like butter. Delicious. I can melt that voice and make a delicious green bean casserole.
Well, I want to say to everyone, have a very Merry Solstice, Happy Christmas, Kick-Ass Kwanzaa.
Hanukkah. Don't forget.
Yeah, Happy Hanukkah.
Although Hanukkah, is that over now?
Yeah, I think it's over by now. But hopefully had a good one. And just have a great holiday season and, of course, a wonderful new year.
I am Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey.
And this has been the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.